following may not necessarily represent the views or opinions of this station, but they're coming around.
What is your major malfunction?
And now, the original pork-eating crusader,
Mr. Tom Claxton.
Perhaps the most striking irony of the current national debate on gun control is the utter lack of civility, common sense, and basic respect that has become the hallmark of the discussion. Not that these characteristics were absent before. Rather, they were relegated to the fringe elements on both the left and the right, where the rhetoric red meat fed the extremist blood-sucking parasites of society. They have, unfortunately, made their way to 4 of the front pages, mainstream editorial columns, left-wing blogs, and right-wing tweets, as those for gun confiscation now feel emboldened by the recent tragedies and the subsequent exploitation of the events by the pandering-in-chief and his crisis capitalization cronies, saying they are a bunch of cronies. The irony, though, is that those who favor gun control refuse to acknowledge that the supposed epidemic of gun violence is merely a symptom of the society decay that our nation has and continues to experience, as displayed by the very events that they now look to exploit. An even greater irony is that as the debate has become more heated in the aftermath of Newtown, the depth of the depravity on display by those on the side of the gun control only serves to highlight their total lack of understanding of the nature of the problem. That by actively contributing to the removal of civility, common sense, and respect from the national discourse, they are no longer, if they ever were, providing a forum for unbiased commentary on the topic, but rather are only adding fuel to a fire which threatens to burn us all. One only has to look to a recent editorial cartoon which was featured in the Kansas City Star. The February 9th cartoon by Lee Judge shows a grave with a headstone engraved with the name American Sniper and features the caption, quote, "If only there had been a good guy with a gun around." The cartoon is a reference to National Rifle Association leader Wayne LaPierre's oft-repeated quote in the wake of the Sandy Hook Elementary massacre that, quote, "The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun." And of course, former Navy SEAL Chris Kyle's book, American Sniper. There is some controversy over exactly when and where the cartoon ran, but according to the Blaze website, the cartoon did run in Mississippi's very own Sun Herald on February the 13th, 4 days after its original publication in the Star and in close proximity to Kyle's funeral. Interestingly enough, the Sun Herald has refused comment on the cartoon, and the link to the paper's cartoon archives for this date is no longer working. That's funny, isn't it? Miriam Pepper, editorial vice president at the Star, defended the cartoon, calling it, quote, "very powerful," and that it made a very telling point. She also added that she was sure that Judge didn't intend any disrespect. I truly wonder if she could tell me exactly what the point was. For her comments, along with the cartoon, illustrate the disrespect that Judge Pepper and those of their ilk have for our nation's heroes, as well as a disregard for the truth of the situation, which led to Kyle's murder and the majority of the gun violence that occurs throughout the world. LaPierre's comments, which were made days after the Newtown shooting and under pressure from the media, are rife with the common sense that was once a hallmark of our nation, that a bad guy with a gun will most likely be stopped by a good guy or a gal with a gun. Just take note of the Georgia mother who recently stopped a bad guy only after shooting him 7 times in order to protect her children as they hid from the criminal who had invaded their home. The fact that Chris Kyle, America's most successful sniper, was gunned down was no doubt met with glee by those on the left and derision by some best described as off the reservation, such as former Congressman Ron Paul, who tweeted, quote, "Kyle's death seems to confirm that he who lives by the sword dies by the sword." Paul's comments are no less misguided than Judge's cartoon, and both missed the mark by a wide margin. Chris Kyle was there to help a fellow veteran in need, one who, by most accounts, was suffering from extreme mental illness, having been taken to a mental hospital twice in the last 5 months, and who reportedly told his sister in the wake of the shooting that he had, quote, "sold his soul for a new truck." Chris Kyle's new truck, no less. Therein lies the Chris Kyle conundrum for the gun control nuts on the left, as demonstrated by this despicable cartoon. By any account, Kyle, a highly decorated combat veteran Navy SEAL, knew how to conduct himself around firearms as well as how to defend himself in close-quarter combat, whether he was armed or unarmed. The reality of this situation is that Kyle, in attempting to aid his fellow veteran, was not armed and was, by most accounts, basically shot in the back. I have no doubt that if Kyle had been armed himself and had had a half a second to respond, the situation would have ended differently, though no less tragically. The culprit here was not the gun, nor was it some karma that Kyle had brought upon himself. It was a human being with mental illness, just as the perpetrators of the shootings at Newtown and Aurora and shooters from Gabby Giffords to Ronald Reagan. That the mainstream media would choose not only to publish this filth, but then to create excuses to defend its existence is disgusting and deplorable, and only goes to show that they are either A, ignorant, B, stupid, C, brainwashed, or C, complicit. I'll just let you be the judge, as they are all equally damning. However, if there is a saving grace, it is that they have at least chosen to acknowledge the passing of American hero Chris Kyle. That is more than we can say for the Commander-in-Chief, Barack Obama, who has yet to honor the memory of our nation's true heroes in any of his speeches, most egregiously omitting his name from the fictitious State of the Union address earlier this week. After all, they said that all publicity is good publicity, as long as they spell your name right. And so for the Scuttlebutt Network today, we are all Chris Kyle.
Where's your drill sergeant, men? Load up, sir! Load up, sir!
So am I to understand that you men completed your training on your own?
That's the fact, Jack! That's the fact, Jack!
These are exactly the kind of men I want working on the Scuttlebutt Network.
Boom, shakalaka, boom, shakalaka, boom, shakalaka.